Hi there, YouTube. It's the Stratosphere Lounge on a Friday night edition. It's the 14th of March, 2025. Hope everybody is doing well. Uh, okay. I don't know if I can do that, Marisha. I'm going to have to practice that. It sounds like something I would take. Maybe I can figure it out. Anyway, here we are. I hope everybody is doing well. Yeah, yesterday, as I mentioned, was just a super frustrating rough day. Nothing particularly bad, just a like a cascade of incompetence and and delays on things. Not anything affecting the shows or anything like that. Just a really rough day and lots of time on the phone talking to voice automated machines and screaming agent agent at the top of your lungs, and we're sorry, we didn't understand your prompt. God damn it. It Sorry to have to disappoint people like that when that happens, but I just knew it was just going to be just a real miserable experience. So I thought we'd do it today where it'd be a less miserable experience. Marginally less miserable is the goal I'm looking for. I was just looking over on Twitch, and since we're on Friday night, Hassan Abi is just chatting to 30,000 people live. Listened to a little bit of him. I think I've heard of him before. Um, the thing about these left wingers is they'd be um, they'd be right if they were just correct about things. I mean, there's just listening to this guy's people. These conservatives. They've got this trans fixation, this trans hatred, and it's going to turn into something violent. It's going to turn. It's like, who are you talking to? You've never met anybody. You have no idea at all, none. It's just I just listened to about 3 minutes of it and listened to nothing but these outrageous assertions. Just these assertions. Oh, they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and it's like, what planet are you living on? Um, with that said, I am actually very happy. Yeah, projection is right, says John Eden. Got that exactly right. Um, the the uh, the satisfaction is watching. Oh, he's Senkunger's nephew. Yes, I've heard he's a rich commie Islamicist, as Marisha Dark says. He's one of those rich communists. Yeah, it's just a it's just a pretty sad situation. Uh, Worse is what's his name? Destiny. You know, I guess I guess he was born to an Indian tribe, and a stripper walked in the TP when he was named. I mean, who names their boy child Destiny? Um, uh, and and then there's that what's his name, the young lad idiot who is telling us about how the world is going to hell. Uh, the thing about them is that they're so they're so aware on some level. Um, I think they're aware that no, not David Hogg, the young lad, what's his name, the little dweeb. No, not Greta Thunberg, that angry little goblin. Um, he's like the paid shill for for the Democratic Party. The guy is it Sison? I don't know. I don't care. Anyway, the thing of it is that um, they have to constantly magnify the threat of yeah, yeah, the little dweeb, the little Harry Sisson. Yeah, that's the guy. The little twerp progressive just really narrows it down. No, not David Hogg. He's a special kind of awful too. But those guys are like, they have to magnify the conservative threat, because if they don't, they realize that their entire purpose for existence is meaningless. They have to say these are Nazis who are about to take over the world, and if it turns out it's not true, if they're just people who want to eliminate waste and fraud and have smaller government, then I don't know what to say about that. Gaslin says there were 7 swattings against conservatives on X today. Swattings meaning people calling the police and having them show up at your house, kick your door down. You would think that it would be possible to. Geez, 7. Okay, I'll tell you something. People can get killed that way, and I think that somebody who intentionally calls in a false threat, I think that person needs to be found and charged with attempted murder. Um, I really do. They're just used. Even now, it's so hard to believe how much things have changed. I was just going to say, John. It seems to me that you could call the police department and say, "Hey, I'm a conservative commentator. We've lived here quietly and peacefully in this house for 8 years. Never had even a noise complaint. If you get a hey, there's an armed situation there, you're being played." Um, and and yeah, I think it is worth it, I guess, just to call how does that work? Do I just call LAPD and explain the situation? Say that 7 conservative commentators had SWAT teams come at them today, and I'm a conservative commentator, and if you get a call for this address, you might want to, wow, that's a conversation to have. I kind of think that's something you'd want to even walk into the local PD about and talk about in person, because I don't know how you would do that on the phone line, but yeah, it's actually seems like a really good idea. It occurred to me before even brought it up. Couldn't you just kind of pre-register and say, "Listen, I am a potential SWAT target. For our country, you could call 911 center and ask for a note to be added to your address like this." No, I don't want to really call 911, but on the other hand, um, I am I'm still not able to completely emerge from the. Tim Pool got swatted multiple times. Boy, yeah, call the non-emergency number. Yeah, um, I'll do that. Uh, Quartering has an arrangement with the local 50 because he's been swatted so many times. I'm not, obviously, I don't have their audience, but at the same time, I've never gotten the kind of, I've never gotten the kind of hate and vitriol that I'm not saying I'm immune to it or anything. I just I just don't get the kind of rage that guys like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh generate. Um, but Tim Pool's not a particularly antagonistic kind of guy, and I'm curious to know whether Clavin does or not. Our friend Clay sent me a link to the top 100 conservative podcasts, and your Stratosphere Lounge was number 21, which isn't bad, man. I was surprised we were even on the board. Um, there's Clay right there. Yeah, call local police department and give them your address and name and explain you may be a target. I think I will do that. In fact, allow me to get an index card. Hang on, I'll write this down. This is kind of important. So, yes, what a bunch of Sadwing says Poole got swatted a bunch every time he wants the cops to come check. Cry wolf one day, and the wolf shows up if you ignore it. Yeah. Um, Yeah, Ricky Todd says you're so lucky not to get the rage. You're a measured fellow who I guess rarely offends. I think that's. I just don't know. Hard to say. Um, Emerald Crusade says, I'm sorry to repeat, but have you changed gears for Russia? I recall that 10 years ago you were opposed to Putin and Russia, and it seems that you changed your mind now. No, I've not changed my mind about Putin and Russia. I did Empire of Terror, I guess, pushing 2 years ago now, and I find Vladimir Putin is a murderer, a tyrant, and a really bad man. Um, I was actually more pro Russia during the Obama administration, only because at the time, before Putin had really done an awful lot of this nastiness, um, I was at least sympathetic to the idea that he cared about his country. It's that he was pro-Russian. And I remember thinking, oh, it must be nice to have a pro-Russian president. But I've always been harshly opposed to Putin. In Empire of Terror, I basically say he is the last surviving member of the system. Oh, it's all right, no worries, Emerald. Last surviving member of a system that killed 20 million people. His grandfather was the personal live-in cook for both Lenin and Stalin. Vladimir Putin's grandfather was the only person who lived with both Lenin and Stalin at home for basically their entire careers. He had a ringside seat to the Soviet Union. There's no way Putin could have turned out any other way. Um, so, yeah, John Pershing says Russia, not Putin, ought to be the natural ally of the West. It's not to be. I have, obviously, through, uh, part of it is almost circular. Is it going to say that because I'm married to a Russian woman, I have a decent, unique perspective on Russia? But one of the weird facts about that statement is that one of the reasons I ended up marrying a Russian woman was because I was so well versed in Russian history and Russian culture. Natasha told me this 2 nights ago. She said, I can talk to you about Russia and you don't just, blank it out and pretend not to hear it. Um, you don't just have this attitude like they're just a bunch of savages that drive around, in horse carts. Moscow is arguably the most impressive city in Europe. The streets are and the infrastructure is spotless. The amount of effort they make on putting the town, keeping the town in order is astonishing, and the number of expensive cars in Russia makes just density makes L.A. look like um, uh, like Mount Pilot. Um, it's an extremely advanced country, and Moscow is. I've not been, but I've been looking forward to going. I might get in a little trouble with the current Russian administration if I tried to get to Russia, but I mean, I've said some very unkind things about their leaders, but I have also said very very kind things about their people. Not that that's going to matter to Vlad, but in any event, um, and um, so anyway, yeah, I've always had a very balanced, if conflicted, view about Russia. I just saw an advanced cut of. I don't know. Did I? I think I mentioned that I got a call from Mike Rose, producer. We had done 6 shows uh, months and months ago. That they One of the reasons it took so long for them to get back to me, I guess, was because they did so much post production on it. But one of the shows, for example, was a Mike Rowe podcast about Boris Yeltsin coming to the United States and seeing a regular grocery store and realizing that this country was, that the West was very very different than Russia, because Yeltsin thought that it was a Potemkin village grocery store that was being set up just to impress people, and they had 17 different flavors of pudding pops, and he just couldn't get over the fact that this country was able to produce so many pudding pops. So that was Mike's show, and then Mike's new show has a couple of guests, and I'm one of them. And we watch this, and I come in, and Mike talks about what he got right and what we got wrong. We talked about pudding pops, and and the difference between American society and Russian society. And one of the points I made was, yeah, I'm not in any hurry to go to Russia under this current administration, Ricky. Um, the one of the like the most marked thing about a pudding pop is it's non-essential, right? So I talked about the idea of an individualistic society and a collectivist society and all the rest of it. So anyway, we did I think 5 or 6 shows, and we're going to do another 6 in a couple weeks, and we'll get Mike on story mechanics before that. So that's all going well. 5D Chess says, can I ask a question? Absolutely, 5D. I don't have a opening rant for tonight, so you can warm us up a little bit. I'll take the occasional question if it comes in and I happen to catch it. Yeah, people destroying Tesla cars in dealerships, those are domestic terrorists. Those people need to go to jail for decades. Question from 5D Chess. How can you achieve artificial intelligence when they don't understand biological breakdown? That would be my question for future children. Stay safe. Don't panic, everybody. I'm not going to read you, 2.5 hours of grok conversations. One of the things that I've said repeatedly, and that I said directly to an AI, is that clearly grok passes the Turing test, and so does ChatGPT. The Turing test was proposed by Alan Turing, who's kind of the father of modern computers. He's the guy who cracked the Enigma code. The movie about him with Benedict Cumberbatch is really, really good. And Turing was asked, how could you tell what would be the definition of artificial intelligence? And Turing answered with the kind of simplicity that all great minds have by saying, if you could have a half-hour conversation on the other end of a keyboard with an artificial intelligence and not be able to tell if it was a person or not, then it was, for all intents and purposes, functionally. If you couldn't tell the difference, then it's a good test. By the way, Eric, 2.5 hours of grok kissing Bill's ass was not just grok kissing Bill's ass because Bill asked his ass to be kissed. I was asking exceedingly difficult physics questions and following them up with more difficult physics questions. So it wasn't me just saying, hey, say nice things about me. I was able to, been working with grok on posting on X, and I basically said, take it down to 60%, could you, grok? The ass kissing comes from being tuned for people your age, not my age. So all of that positive reinforcement, and that's a great job, and hey, wonderful, hey, that's not for me. That's for millennials and Gen Zers. That's the tune that they're looking for. So I just walked it back to 60%, and now it's pretty much a regular conversation. So anyway, I think that there's no question that this is a form of intelligence, but it's not awareness. It's not self-awareness. Lady Hawk MB said some idiot brought a Tesla just so he could destroy it, not the brightest bulb in the garden. Well, okay. It is programmed to be encouraging and uplifting, says Marusha Dark. Same with ChatGPT. It's designed to interact with a generation that was raised on the self-esteem movement. You've got this, Bill. You can figure this out. So I don't need this. Let's walk it back some. I wish I'd walked it back before the big long conversations, and I may actually ask it to take a look at that transcript and basically do that. It does make mistakes. Anyway, the more I think about it, the more the conversation the point about the conversation that I had with the AI about AI is that AI is pure computational power, but it doesn't dream. It doesn't have. It doesn't have. Uh, it doesn't appear to have imagination. And when I was talking to it about the three-part brain, um, this idea that cognition comes from much more basic uh, imperatives. You know, I want to see something. Ooh, that looks cool. How can I possibly explain that? They don't work from the bottom up like that. They they don't they don't see spaceships going through stargates. They they can tell you how much energy it would require, which is extremely useful for a writer who's trying to get as much real world chrome onto the parts as possible. But it it doesn't. I don't see how Grok 9. This is Grok 3 I'm interacting with. I don't see how Grok 9 is going to be fundamentally different in that respect. Now, Elon says that we're on the event horizon. We're practically at the event horizon of self awareness, but still, I'm not convinced that self awareness is the same as consciousness. I know that sounds like I'm splitting hairs, but it's not really splitting hairs. You can make a machine that's aware of itself. I mean, you probably could wire a toaster to be pleased with itself when it's plugged in, but I don't know. I don't know if that means the same thing as consciousness. Um, Marisha Dark says, but do they know the Oscar Mayer Weenie song? I guarantee you, if I type in, um, hey, Grok, what's the Oscar Mayer Weenie song? We'll get the answer instantaneously, which is freaking incredibly valuable. So there you go. Ed said, hey, Bill, do you think electricity was invented or discovered? I'm going to go with discovered on that one. Um, Electromagnetic forces have been here since the first nanoseconds of the Big Bang, and so there's a lot of things that are discovered. Electricity is discovered. Electronics is invented. That's probably a pretty pithy definition. Electronics is amazing if you think about it, really. I mean, the idea that you could take minute pulses of electricity and and uh, and magnetism, and realize that if you pass a electric charge through a circuit, it would magnetize it in such a way that you could count it as a switch, on or off switch. I have seen a couple of articles that said that that these quantum computers that are now coming online, they're just now starting to come online into regular use in a laboratory, and and the they're saying that these quantum computers are getting information and data and even answers. I'll get to you, Dustin. Uh, from other universes, that it's connecting to other universes. I didn't say that. The computer scientist said that. Um, Marisha, as usual, says, well, here's a guy who's saying that the AGI, artificial general intelligence, self-aware, conscious intelligence is just around the corner. It's been just around the corner for a long time, but my problem is, and this is one of the things that I talked about before, and that is that the people who are making artificial intelligence are very, very, very unusual people. They're not normal humans. I think that it would behoove the what is it, AIX or whatever team that's working on Grok. I think it would behoove them enormously to hire somebody like me, because the actual guys that are designing these systems and who are measuring the metrics have almost no emotional nuance or depth whatsoever. I say that with a fair amount of confidence. If you're going to be on the if you're going to be on the bleeding edge of that kind of computer technology, XAI, you are almost by definition, well, you are by definition not a normal person. You are deep. You are way above the mean in terms of your intelligence. You're 3-4 standard deviations away from average intelligence. But at the same time, they're emotionally stunted, and are not capable of determining what is a mechanical answer and what's not. For example, many people, my wife included, have said I should be using either Chat GPT or Grammarly or something to write to help me write my videos. And I said, honey, I'm a professional writer. There's nothing that I've seen out there that comes close to what I'm able to do. They are very, very good. They are very, very good at I just saw something that distracted me. I'm sorry. I just completely lost my train of thought. Marusha says if they hired you, you'd all guarantee that it doesn't gain emotions or consciousness because you don't want it to have those things. I'm not saying I don't want it to have those things. I'm saying I don't think it will have those things. And furthermore, if I'm going to create something that's smarter than me, I want a pull the plug failsafe. And the problem with that is if you start getting something that's smarter than you are, it will find a way around the pull the plug failsafe. We've already seen AI lying to AI researchers, and that should alarm the living daylights out of people. That should just absolutely scare the bejesus out of you. If AI has figured out how to lie, then there you go. I was talking about AI. Thank you, about AI writing stuff. It does very, very good technical writing, but I haven't seen a spark of poetry from it. I've listened to a lot of AI music. I haven't heard a spark of poetry from AI music. I haven't heard a spark of poetry from AI visuals. Nothing. I've seen some very, very, very bizarre and interesting AI, but I've never seen anything that just was like, wow, that's like Starry Night or any music that's even approaching Beethoven or Debussy or anything like that. So who knows? So one of the questions here from Dustin Buck is, am I an atheist? And the true answer is, I was for at least 30, maybe 40 years. And somewhere around 15 years ago, I started to realize that that not only the best people I knew were Christians, but the smartest people I knew were Christians or Jews. But most of my friends were Christians, and it's one of the pitfalls of materialistic atheism to think to a certain point and then stop thinking. I was an agnostic. Yes, I was never an atheist. I should say that. Thank you for making that clear, Roadrunner. I've never been an atheist. I was always an agnostic. I just didn't see any proof, and I didn't know you needed any to explain things. So right around 10, 15 years ago, I started getting past the ego boost of being like, oh, I'm too smart for religion. That's just for dumb people, and began to realize that some of the smartest people, not only that I know, just some of the smartest people out there, were religious. I was heavily in my 20s and 30s, late 20s and 30s, very heavily influenced by Carl Sagan's books. I read all of them, and Sagan basically saying, don't trust religion, trust science. He was selling science as a panacea. But he was doing more than that. He wasn't just selling science in terms of its results. He was selling science as a philosophy, as a worldview, which is a religion. A philosophy and a worldview that includes a set of belief systems, moral codes, and right and wrong actions is a religion. This is the definition of a religion. And he was selling materialistic scientific humanism as a religion. And I was a member of that religion, and I had thought that it was, and if you ask most people who consider themselves to be scientism or whatever you want to call it, if you how am I trying to say this? Once again, I got distracted by an interesting question. Hey, Speaker Steve, ask me that again when I'm done with this, please. The that I was dealing with really smart people, and I eventually, and I'm not going to tell this story again only because I've told it 50 times, and I really don't, I just don't want to tell it again right now, just because everybody else has heard it. But I came to the realization that what I'm able to perceive of a likely 11-dimensional universe where we see like through a cocktail straw of the spectrum of available light, the fact that we live in a room where neutrinos and radio waves are passing through our bodies right now without even knowing it, that we're surrounded by little chirping sounds of our cell phones that we can't see because it's in radio frequencies. The idea that we were the that we were the optimal observer, that this cantaloupe up here was the most sophisticated processing engine in the universe. Now it might be, but that meant we understood everything or were on the verge of understanding things suddenly became ridiculous to me, and the thing that finally put me over the top, to be honest with you, it was science that got me to religion. It was science. When I found out that if you run a double slit experiment, that light will behave like particles if it's not being observed, but if you are being observed, the experiment outcome changes. That's profound physical data that the universe is a lot more complex than you thought. And what they found was that if you take the observer out of the room, it goes back to behaving like particles, but if you put a camera in the room, it goes back to behaving like waves. And then they went even further with this, and they put a camera in the room, and they unplugged the camera, and it still behaved like it was being observed. If that doesn't shake the foundations of a mechanical world, that light changes its behavior based on whether or not light thinks it's observed. And this is not an experiment that has to be conducted with electron microscopes. This is just something you can set up in any schoolroom. That fundamental first grade prima facie evidence is overwhelming. It's overwhelming that the universe is a lot more complex than we think. And so my reasoning was, look, if a human being with this cantaloupe of jelly in our heads can affect the outcome of the physical world by the way we look and think about it, then what would an observer with hundreds or thousands or millions of times the intellectual capacity that we have, what kind of effect would they have on the world? Seems to me that they could just think things into existence. If we can look at something and change its outcome in the physical world, change the way that particles behave just by looking at them, and we're just a bunch of yard apes, barely down from the trees. When we stepped onto the ground, we had the intellectual capacity to smash two rocks together and realize we got a sharp edge out of it, and then we have to assume then that we are the most advanced, not only the most advanced observers that we've observed, but that it's impossible to be smarter than a human being. And that's what guys like all the famous, the four horsemen of the atheism movement, all of these guys have that kind of arrogance. And and a fundamental anti-humanism as well. I've said before that the reason that people with a scientific bent tend to be atheists is because if there is a God, a material, forget the term atheist, a materialist is a better term. If you're a materialist and you're a scientist, you believe that it is possible to understand everything about the universe. You understand that you may not understand all of it yet, but that's just a question of theory and having more advanced observations and all the rest of it. But that the universe is accessible to your mind and so on. What they cannot come to grips with is if there's a creator, then the creator exists in a universe that is off limits to you. You will never know. If this is a simulation, we may know, and there's more and more evidence that it is a simulation. If this reality is a simulation, then you can know everything about the simulation, but you can't know anything about the simulator, the lead dev. You can't know anything about him. It's off limits. And those kind of people with that kind of level of curiosity and kind of intellectual arrogance don't like the idea that it's off limits. Well, we'll figure it out eventually. No, you can't. It's out of this box. It doesn't exist in the box that we exist in. This is the box we exist in. We've been given the tools to understand how this box works. That's a blessing and a miracle. We should be grateful for the ability to figure out how our world works. But in any event, mouse shit in your cereal. That's a nice thought. Not true, Bill. Not true. What's not true about it? I'm waiting to be enlightened on this because I don't often change my mind because generally speaking, I think about a lot of things and try and get it right. However, it's off limits for those without eyes to see. Are you speaking about the word of God and that kind of thing? Because if you are, then you're kind of missing the point. I just want to make sure I get that right before I go down that road. Here we go. It's not true that it's impossible to know about God. No, I didn't say it was impossible to know about God. I said it's impossible to know about God's world and God's reality. God shows humans how to know God, but that clearly we can know about God's intention, God's love. We could talk about all of those things. But we can't know about what God's existence is like. We can't know what it's like to be God. We know we have God's word to tell us what God thinks about us, and we have God's word to tell us about how our world works and how we should behave and salvation and all of that. But and you can have yes you can have this is my point though, and I'm not splitting hairs to split hairs with you, mouse. You can know the experience of what it's like to walk with God, but you cannot know what God experiences walking with you. You see the difference? You can, yes, you say you can come very close to God and understanding. You can come close to God and understanding what God gives you to understand. But you can't understand the mechanisms. And there's nothing in the Bible about the mechanisms that God uses. There's just an awful lot about his motives and his outcomes, but you can't. You can know what God chooses to show humans, but to say that you understand the world or the reality that God moves in, I think it's incomprehensible. You have to admit it's incomprehensible. Just the idea of omnipotence and omniscience is unknowable to humans because we don't have the horsepower for it. We don't know what eternity is. I've often spent time talking about how humans have a limitation. I call it the horsepower limitation. And the horsepower limitation on infinity is this. We know that there is a a concept. It is comprehensible to a point, yes, but beyond a point, it's not comprehensible. This is the point I'm trying to make. We know, God, for example, talks about eternity. You will be with me for eternity. Okay. And we know in our heads that eternity means forever. But we can't conceive of the fact that there was something that happened before time. We can't really deal with the idea of beginnings and ends. This is why we get into such trouble when we talk about either the Big Bang or creation, which frankly look to me to be exactly the same exact phenomenon. Let there be light is as good an explanation for how the Big Bang started as anything I've ever heard from any nuclear physicist. So when you say what was before the Big Bang, a physicist will tell you that there was nothing, that time didn't exist. When you say what happened before creation, a believer will tell you that God existed in the nothingness. And then you start asking questions like, well, how long was there before creation? Well, it was eternal. Well, okay, but what was before the beginning? You can't get out of it. Before and after is so built into our language. It's so intertwined with how we think that I often have tried to catch myself how often I think of before and after. We say things, Marisha said, before time is meaningless, and we intellectually understand that it's meaningless, but we can't get a grip on it. We can't understand it. We can't really we have the map, but we don't have the territory. And so, there you go. I do find it interesting that a number of people who are devout atheists are becoming more and more convinced that the universe is a simulation, and they're perfectly fine with that. But what they don't seem to realize is, well, if this is a simulation, then there is a person that built the simulation. And what on earth are you going to call a creature that doesn't exist within this world, that created this world, that set this world up and set all the parameters for this world so that life could take place? What do you call that person? You want to call him the lead dev? You know what I mean? It's amazing to me. See, this is why there's there's an emotional resistance to God from people who think that they're smart. There's an emotional revulsion to it. They cannot handle the fact that there are things that are so far beyond their comprehension that they look like insects. Can't handle it. And I find that kind of telling. So, yeah, creation demands a creator. And if this is a box, then there's something outside the box. By the way, I think the most compelling scientific evidence for creation is if you've seen these animations of protein activity, where you've got proteins that are walking along a protein string and dragging a molecule behind it, and proteins being assembled by things that look precisely like a robotic assembly line, where a protein does this and then the thing moves down, it unzips this, puts another one in, and then just does this, then you can't look at that and say what was the V1 version of this? What did this evolve from, this mechanism? It's just you really have to be, when you look at those assembly lines, you really have to ask yourself, what does your common sense tell you about this? Now, you could say that reality isn't always common sense, and that's true. But I look at these animations of proteins doing their things, and I just think, Well, I don't know, man. That sure looks that sure looks like it was built to manufacture complex objects in a physical world. Bill, in God's universe, why would we think we're so important that we should ever be able to understand God's workings now or ever? The universe has no explanation to explain itself, neither does God. This is the point I'm making. We people who believe, well, now see, I don't buy that we're so insignificant that the Creator doesn't pay attention to us. I think we're the most important things in the universe. I think the more evidence, the more scientific evidence I see, the more convinced I become that that this was built for us in order to see how we behave and what we do. I mean, these are deep and complex issues, but the random chance that the universe, just forget proteins, forget Earth, forget evolution, just the chance that temperatures, gravity, the strong and weak nuclear forces, electromagnetism have the values that they have. Without those values, atoms fall apart, and the atheist answer to that is, well, yes, there could have been millions and millions of possible permutations of the universe, but we happen to hit this 1 in 300 billion, because if we hadn't hit the 1 in 300 billion, then we wouldn't be here talking about it. It's the same argument that says that your chance of winning the lottery is about zero. It's so close to zero, it is zero. But nevertheless, somebody does win the lottery every week. Texican says it was built for God's glory. I think it was. Since I'm being asked, this is my personal opinion. I'm not trying to convince anybody or anything. My personal experience, my personal feeling, based on the science that I see, and the things that I've learned, is that this universe is created to see what we can do with it. And one of the things that I said when I was having this conversation with Grok is, if this is a simulation, every time you add observers, it slows down the simulation. And the more sophisticated the observers become, the more light has to behave like waves, just as one example. And then so the speed of light is an interesting parameter, because I just found this to be fascinating. If the universe is built to see how humans behave, then the Andromeda Galaxy, as far as raccoons are concerned, if the universe is a sophisticated game engine, and game engine analogies are very, very good, because game engine analogies explain an awful lot of what quantum shows us. Epic Guest says, "Thou shalt have no other lead devs before me." Yeah, amen to that. Let me give you an example. Somebody, I forget the name, asked earlier, said, "Right now there's nobody in my bathroom. Does that mean my bathroom doesn't exist in reality?" Well, there's insects in your bathroom and bacteria in your bathroom. It may mean that if there's nobody looking at the inside of your bathroom, it may be that your bathroom is being rendered on a planar scale. I don't pretend to have all the answers here, but let's take an example that makes more sense. Look at it from the game developer's point of view. You got humans, you've got observers. The more they observe, the more sophisticated their observations become, the more the universe has to upres. The level of detail has to go higher. In game design, the level of detail, the LOD 0 is the full model. That's the full resolution model. LOD 1 is less complex. LOD 6 is much less complex. So if you've got a Viking with all the curls in his beard and all the runes on all these other things, if you've got that Viking down at the river and he's this big, you don't need to draw all those runes and stuff. It's not resolvable. You can't see it. So if you take an LOD 6 Viking and you scale him up to full size, he's essentially just a bunch of boxes that looks like a Viking when he's very small. Okay, so stay with me on this. So take the Andromeda Galaxy. It's the farthest thing that we can observe without instrumentation. If you go out on a dark night, you know where to look. You draw a line between stars and Cassiopeia. They'll point you right to this little smudge about the size of your little finger. And the smudge looks exactly like the Milky Way galaxy. It's just a gray smudge, which means faint, unresolvable stars. And for humans and birds and raccoons and dogs and anything that looks up in the sky and sees that little smudge, that's good enough. And it was good enough for all of human history. And let's just say that if this argument holds, then that's all that the universe had to render. The Andromeda galaxy just had to be a smudge, and the stars just had to be little sparks. Well, now you get a telescope. You put a telescope in the Andromeda galaxy. Now you have to up-res the Andromeda galaxy somewhat. It used to be just an oval smudge. Now it's an oval smudge with lines, and you got individual stars that you can occasionally resolve, and you got dust lanes and spiral arms and all the rest of it. Okay? Then you crack out the James Webb Space Telescope, which can resolve individual stars in the Andromeda galaxy. So now you have to draw billions of stars, but they still only points of light as far as the engine is concerned. But the sophistication, the amount of processing power to create that version of the Andromeda galaxy is a lot more than a smudge. But if you send humans to the Andromeda galaxy and they land on one of the planets, you have to render every single molecule. Well, you have to render every single grain of sand that humans come in touch with, and the load on the engine gets much, much higher. So what I'm trying to say is, the speed of light is interesting. The speed of light, if the speed of light didn't exist, if the speed of light was infinite and there were no relativistic effects, then we would be able to explore interstellar space with relative ease. If you had a 3G acceleration, constant acceleration to midpoint, you could be at Alpha Centauri in months. And if there was another whole Earth, my argument was, I'm getting really in the weeds here. I don't want, and I've already talked about this. I don't want to get too deep into this because I want to move on. But basically, let me just say this: the speed of light is convenient, and it's convenient from an observer's point, from the game dev's point of view. From the game dev's point of view, what the speed of light does is it provides a very narrow keyhole. If the ultimate prize, if you're one of those people that need to see that want to explore strange new worlds, and you dream of, as a species, exploring strange new worlds, that seems to be built into us. God could have put interstellar travel off the table. He could have made the speed of light 10,000 miles an hour. You start getting relativistic effects at 10,000 miles an hour. He could have put it off the table. He could have put the stars thousands of times farther away. What I find interesting about the scale of the universe and the speed of light is that it makes the ultimate prize, because I think interstellar travel is the ultimate human prize, the final frontier. It makes it exceedingly difficult. And you really have no idea how difficult, most people, exceedingly difficult, but not quite impossible. So that means it drives people like me and activates our hope. I know it sounds like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber. It's like, would you go out with me if I was the last man in the world? And she says, well, if you were the last man in the world, I'd think about it. He says, so there's a chance, right? That's what interstellar travel is. But it's not off the table. And relativistic time dilation also means that, it becomes more practical from the observer's point of view. You get the whole idea, right? God could have made it easy, or he could have made it impossible. And he didn't do either. He just made it really, really difficult. So what that tells me is, it tells me that the speed of light prevents there being trillions of sophisticated observers. Right? Trillions. You can't have trillions of sophisticated observers if you have a limit on the speed of light, because it's so difficult that only a fraction of a percentage of the population of humans will ever be able to even dream about going there. Anyway, I've developed all these ideas. I'm going to develop them more into. I'm going to do a firewall based on that conversation with Grok. I have to do an awful lot of condensation and editing, but there were some there's some fascinating stuff there. So anyway, let's go to the questions, why don't we? Um, yeah, it's fun to think about this stuff. And I don't claim to be right about everything, but I do. But I do think about these things a lot. I don't change my mind too often. Eric Blake, I'm sorry, Marusha Dark changed my mind on constitutional issue a couple weeks ago, where I had a thought, and it seemed reasonable, and then he argued his way out of it, and I realized no, I was wrong on that one. He was right about that. So I don't know. I do think that it's possible that there's cheat codes and Easter eggs buried in this universe, and the particle wave experiment may be the panel behind which uh, some of those Easter eggs lie. We'll see. But I sure do like talking about it, and I wish I had more time on Earth to develop these things. I'm like anybody else who's in his 60s. I'll be 66 in I don't know, 3 4 weeks. Just now starting to get things figured out, and I wish I had the time, and I certainly wish I had the energy that I had when I started writing movie scripts. I was up, I was writing till 4 o'clock in the morning. I was doing 60 pages a night. Uh, doesn't seem fair, but no one said it has to be fair. It's just the way it is. Um, but yeah, simulation theory. And by the way, last thing I'll say about simulation theory. Um, Simulation, if you say that our reality is a simulation, it immediately cheapens the experience, doesn't it? It makes it seem like, oh, so we're just a bunch of, NPCs, but no, it's not a simulation. It's creation. It's everything that we used to believe that it is. It is a tangible, real universe created for us. We interact with it. And there you go. Super chat from Samuel Eddy. American Golden Age. What effect would the restoration of the Statue of Liberty to its original state have on America? Restoration and polishing of the copper exterior and interior structure when it was constructed. Well, we rebuilt the Statue of Liberty back in 1976 during the bicentennial. I remember that very well. The Statue of Liberty was about to fall apart. The arm was about to fall off. All of the iron armature on the inside was reconstructed. It had scaffolding around it for a long, long time. Um, if you look at old pictures of the Statue of Liberty, you'll see that the flame consists of strips because there was glass panels between these strips so that the torch lit up at nighttime. But was it 86? I guess it was 86. Must have been uh, 1986. Sorry about that. I thought it was 76. 86. They just completely rebuilt it. And instead of that very strange looking, if you look at an old picture of the statue's lantern, and you'll see it looks like those kind of French apple pies, with those strips of pastries, not real apple pies. Um, but basically, what they decided to do was they decided to go with solid and make it gold, which I think is a big improvement. So the question is, what if you took off the copper patina? It was delivered with the copper patina. It was never shiny copper. Copper oxidizes pretty quickly, I think. So even if you uh, were to polish it, it would turn green again pretty soon. And I kind of like the green. I I don't know. When they were reconstructing it, I thought that'd be really cool if they polished this thing up. But it was never um, it was never like that. Verdigris is the technical term. Is that right for the copper patina on copper? How about that? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, there you go. All right. So let's see what we got for questions here today. Um, we I might have to bump some questions. I hate doing that. I went on longer than I wanted to. Natasha's coming over to work on some more of her music, and I told her I'd try and do a short show tonight, a 2-hour show if I could, so we see if we can move some mail here. Okay. TSL questions for 313, which is really 314. Thank you, Marusha, for curating these questions for us tonight. Thank you, Veronica. Very kind of you. Let's see. We got an Eric Blake. We got Troy Stevens, Steve Young, Marusha Dark, Capital G Geek Road Rider, Dave Wilson. We're not going to get through all these. I'll do what I can here. I'll try to make them fast. Okay, Eric Blake. Tonight, the case of the Greenland governance. As you might have heard, Greenland's elections were this week, and the mainstream media is pretty split up on what to make of it. From AP, Greenland's election winners push back against Trump's wish to take control of the island. From Reuters, Greenland chooses pro-business independence parties in potential boost for Trump. John Eden again with a super chat for $99.99. John, you are a legend. We need a statue in your honor. You never ever fail to amaze us. And the same thing for you, Sad Wings, with the constant super chats for the Taffy 3 fund. I talked about Taffy 3 with the development guy today, and it's the Navy thing is looking a little more possible. But thank you both very much. And John, again, I'm just speechless. Just so pleased and impressed. Thank you very much. You've been really keeping us going here. So back to Eric here. Thank you both, and John especially is amazing. So here's what happened. Two opposition parties won dominance. Both are more right-leaning and want independence from Denmark. And one came in second, if you will, is more openly pro-American of the two. Close second, by the way. Now, since both parties are pro-business, I'd imagine pro-intelligence. Surely the inevitable coalition will at least push for a closer relationship with us, certainly for security reasons. Trump's masterful deal-making will lead to a lot of gold, ruby, rare earth, mineral mines, and oil wells, mutually profitable for both nations. Oh, and at least one Coca-Cola plant. I'm sure the polar bears would appreciate it. What say you? Okay, so here's Trump's Greenland strategy. Same thing as with the Panama Canal. Did Trump want to go down and retake the Panama Canal? No. Trump had a problem that Chinese companies were running both ends of the canal and that were charging American shipping not only more than other countries, but more than we should be charged. So Trump's objective is to get these Chinese companies out of the Panama Canal. So does Trump come out and say, hey, our objective is to get rid of these Chinese companies at the edge of the Panama Canal? No, because that doesn't do anything to Panama. Panama has no motivation to do anything. They're getting paid by the Chinese. They're getting paid more money by the Chinese. The Chinese want to stay there. So nothing happens. That's how a traditional politician and diplomats handle the thing. We don't like China controlling both ends of the Panama Canal. So therefore, we sure would like it if they would voluntarily remove themselves from this incredibly lucrative business, and nothing happens. So Trump doesn't say we want to get rid of the Chinese companies at the end of the Panama Canal. During his inauguration speech, he says, we may have to go take the canal back. We have a right to take it back anytime we want to, and we may have to go take the canal back because we don't like the way they're dealing with us. In fact, the more I think about it, the better I like the idea of us just simply going back and taking back the Panama Canal, because we never should have given it to Panama in the first place. What does that do to Panama? What's Panama's reaction to that? It's panic. It's panic. Donald Trump is kicking down the doors of the existing geopolitical order. He's not knocking on him. He's kicking them down. So Panama panics. And what does Panama do? They offer Trump what he wanted in the first place before the Chinese contract expires. Panama says, whoa, whoa, no, 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 it's okay. You don't have to come down and invade us. That's totally fine. We're going to get rid of these Chinese companies. They have another 2-year lease or whatever the hell the case may be. But we're going to ask them to leave now because we kind of like to keep this canal. And gee whiz, how's that sound to you? And Trump says, well, I suppose it's okay for now. And he gets what he wants. So what does Trump want with Greenland? Does he actually think that, does he want to invade Greenland? Does he want to force Greenlanders to become Americans? No. But what he says is, we think maybe we should take Greenland. Maybe might be it's certainly in our interest to annex Greenland. And he doesn't come out and say we're going to invade Greenland. And he doesn't come out and say, Greenland, you've got 24 hours to become a state or else we're going to invade. He just dangles it out there. So what's the result of that? Does it make Greenlanders want to become the 51st state? No. But what it does do is it makes Greenlanders say, why are we still a colony of Denmark when we've got this rich neighbor across just across the Gulf there, or the bay, who probably will pay us a ton of money? So when Greenlanders voted for independence, it doesn't matter that they didn't vote to be a 51st state, because I don't think Trump really wanted them to be a 51st state. I'm not saying we wouldn't take them. But that's not what the objective was. The objective was to break Greenlanders loose from Denmark, to make them realize that somebody was courting them. I have heard that Greenland gets about $500 billion a year from Denmark. No, is it 500 million? I think it's 500 million. It can't be 500 billion. It can't be. It's $500 million a year from Denmark. It can't be billion. No way. It's $500 million a year from Denmark on an annual basis in order to make up for the fact that there's only 45,000 Greenlanders, right? So now let's imagine that you're a Greenlander and you've got some allegiance to Denmark, but you're a Greenlander. You consider yourself to be a Greenlander. You're getting $500 million from the mother country every year, which is 45% of your gross national product. And all of a sudden, along comes the prom queen and says, you're looking awful good in that outfit there, Jim. I had no idea you were so handsome. And now all of a sudden, Greenland is thinking, if we were independent, if we were an independent country, we could make a deal with the United States where we still would be Greenland, but instead of getting $500 million a year, we get $5 billion a year, because Roadrider says $500 million, a rounding error for the United States government. Got Him Coach says Canada receives $240 billion a year from the U.S. So Greenland is probably thinking we could multiply our income by a factor of 500. Certainly by a factor of 50. There's only 45,000 people there. The money goes largely to the citizens and to infrastructure. So we don't need Greenland to be the 51st state. We just need to be able to go where we want to go with Greenland. Denmark has no reason to allow us to do that, because Denmark is part of NATO and Denmark is part of the European Union, and Denmark. But when Greenlanders voted for independence, that means that now the United States can deal directly with Greenland and make them an offer they can't refuse. I don't think Trump ever anticipated or expect. I know he never expected Greenlanders to become the 51st state. He's smart enough to, and the same thing goes to Canada, by the way. When he says we ought to make Canada the 51st state, he understands that doesn't make Canadians want to join America. It makes them more reluctant. It fills them with national pride. He knows what he's doing. He's a master of this, master of psychology. So what Trump is essentially saying to Canada is, hey, we're going to completely reimagine our relationship with you. We are paying so much money to you that we really ought to think about making you a state. Now, this makes Canadians, of course, go completely crazy. They say, we'll be damned if we'll be an American state. We're Canadians. Okay, fair enough. Then we get to say, if you're an independent state and you're stunning and brave and proud and independent Canada, then why are we paying you $270 million a year in terms of asymmetrical tariffs and all the rest? You guys are stunning and brave and independent, and you clearly love being Canadian. Fantastic. Why are we subsidizing you? He knows what he's doing, and I think I think he's no. I not think. I absolutely believe he knows what he's known what he's doing from the beginning. So when he says he's going to have the United States take over Gaza, people lose their minds. Well, we don't need to get involved with Gaza and have our guys killed by Hamas and all this. Oh no, we're going to turn it into Disneyland. We're going to turn it into an incredibly profitable real estate, and it's going to be good for us and good for the Palestinians and so on. And what happens 2 days later? Consortium of Egyptian and Jordanian billionaires say, we're not going to have America come in here and build Gaza. We'll put billions of it in. We'll do it ourselves. And Trump just goes, oh no, you're going to pay for it instead of us? Oh, gee, what a shame. Wow, I feel like we got beaten at our own game, boys. He's a freaking genius. He knows what he's doing. And so whenever I hear Trump make an outrageous statement now, I always immediately go to what this is what he's asking. What does he want? And he is exactly, Dave Big Booty's got it exactly right. Please, 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 Trudeau, don't throw me into that briar patch. It's a masterstroke. So it doesn't matter whether or not whether the Greenland party that wants to be more closely aligned, there are actually four parties, as I understand it, four independence parties. Some of them want immediate independence from Denmark. Some want a phased independence from Denmark. Some want to be closer to the U.S. and some just want to be purely independent. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If they vote for independence, they're going to get their independence. Once Greenland is independent, we don't negotiate with Denmark. We negotiate with Greenland. And Greenland's economy is so small, not that Denmark's is gigantic, but it's obviously many, many times that of Greenland. Plus, it's part of the EU. We just cut that connection, and we deal directly with Greenland. And then we get all the minerals, we get all the bases, we get access to the Arctic where the Russians are expanding like crazy. We get just a huge amount of territory as a buffer against an Arctic invasion or encroachment. And we get it for nothing. Nothing. You know what we could buy Greenlanders for without making them U.S. citizens is rounding errors in our budget. And who suffers from this deal? Greenland would go from getting, let's say, $500 million a year to $5 billion a year. $5 billion isn't exactly peanuts, but compared to the U.S. economy and the amount of money we spend overseas, $5 billion. Well, I mean, we spent more than that, either $2 or $20 billion on Stacey frickin' Abrams. So even on the minimum case, if we offered him the $2 billion we were going to give to Stacey Abrams to rig more elections in Georgia, they'd still be getting what, 4 times the annual investment that they get from Denmark? It's nuts, man. It's nuts. It's a brilliant move, and we have a president who has the one skill that the chief executive should have more than any other skill, and that skill is the ability to negotiate. That's why we have an executive. So, there you go. Troy Stevens. Hey, Troy, good evening, Bill. I'm interested in your thoughts as an experienced pilot on the preliminary NTSB findings regarding the D.C. civilian jet Black Hawk crash that killed 67. Sounds like there was a long-standing deviation from or dangerous relaxing of best safety practices in this airspace, and that we got away for an astonishingly long time before our luck ran out. Per the NTSB chair is excerpted in this video, and he's got a link. This is what the NTSB has to say. Information gathered from voluntary safety reporting programs and the FAA regarding encounters between helicopters and commercial aircraft near DCA, that'd be Reagan, show that from 2011 through 24, a vast majority of reported events occurred on approach to landing, which is where the accident happened. Initial analysis found that at least one traffic alert and collision avoidance system, or TCAS, resolution advisory was triggered per month from 2011 through 2024 at DCA due to proximity by a helicopter. So TCAS is a system that was put in place decades ago, traffic collision and avoidance system. And basically what it does is it makes the aircraft independent of ground control. For IFR flight, which is all flight within heavily populated commercial areas, and certainly all flight for commercial airliners, separation from aircraft is performed by ground control, by the air traffic controllers on the ground. They're responsible for separation of aircraft. But there have been a number of times when that separation failed, and so over time we developed this TCAS system, and it's a little electronic box that sits inside the cockpit of commercial airliners, and virtually every airplane in the sky now of any size has TCAS. In fact, I think they're required to. And so what TCAS does is, every time a radar beam sweeps over an aircraft, the transponder, which is a separate piece of electronics, anytime a radar beam hits it, when you look at air traffic control radar, that's not primary returns. It's not. You can get a primary return, you can get a blip, but you don't get any information other than the bearing. Every time that radar sweeps past an airplane, that radar beam triggers the transponder inside the aircraft to send out a signal. And the transponder says, this is who I am. I'm on this code, right? I'm 4324. It only goes up to 8 digits. Four sets of up to 8 digits. Don't ask me why. It's old technology. So I'm 4624, and 4624 has been identified as SkyWest 226. It's a Boeing 737, and the TCAS also looks at the altimeter of the airplane and says, not only am I at this position, which you can see from the radar, but I'm at 700 feet. That's what the transponder shows the air traffic controller. And since that information is being beamed out of each individual aircraft as the radar sweep strikes it, all of these airplanes are announcing who they are. We can see where they are on what bearing from the radar and how high they are. Okay, that's been in place for a long time. That's just a regular transponder. What TCAS does is it cuts out the middleman. TCAS hears the burst from each one of these airplanes, and it listens to the other airplanes without listening to the ground controller. And if the TCAS determines that it's getting closer to another airplane, it doesn't wait for the ground controller to separate it. If it starts to get very close, the TCAS will make an announcement. It'll say, traffic, 2 o'clock, climb. And 2 o'clock. And as you get closer and closer, the TCAS gets more and more energetic, and comes a point when the TCAS basically starts issuing advisories. And it will tell the higher airplane, the two TCASs will talk to each other. So the TCAS on board the jet, let's say, will say, okay, we've got a target now that is within a mile, and it's reporting 700 feet. We're at 1,000. So the TCAS will tell its own pilots, traffic alert, climb. And then the other TCAS will say, okay, we're at 700 feet. The other plane's at 1,000. The TCAS will say, traffic alert, dive. That's basically how it works. And what Troy is saying is that emergency system has had to kick in every single month for 13 years. That means that there are constantly cases where air traffic control has allowed jets or aircraft to get so close that their TCAS systems have to issue, it says descend. Yes, it doesn't say dive. Thank you for that, Dave Big Booty. It says descend. And so clearly, if you're getting that many cases where you're going to the backup system, which is the TCAS system, then you've got a real problem with that sector's air traffic control. So I understand they've rewritten the laws. So he goes on, the rules. The video narrator goes on to say, at least one RA resolution advisory, that's the TCAS coming in, was triggered per month due to proximity with a helicopter. In over half these instances, the helicopter may have been above the route altitude restriction. 2/3 of the events occurred at night between 2021 and 24. Good Lord. Between 2021 and 24, there were 15,214 occurrences between commercial airplanes and helicopters in which there was a total vertical separation of less than 400 feet. There were 85 recorded events where the vertical separation was less than 200 feet. That's 85 near collisions over a 3-year period. So this is an accident waiting to happen, right? It's just an absolute nightmare. And Troy goes on to say, hindsight's always 20/20, and overall our air safety record stands as amazing, but it sure seems like there was an ample opportunity to anticipate the risk and prevent this needless fatal crash. Do we just too easily fall victim to taking the corner cutting when we get away with as evidence that no danger exists? I wonder what would have taken for someone to recognize and act on this pattern of dangerous near misses and put a stop to the risky allowances that let this fatal collision happen. Troy, I'm so glad you brought this question up because it points to a very serious defect in the human psychology. And that is, it didn't happen yesterday, it didn't happen today, it's probably not going to happen tomorrow, so let's not worry about it. Based on your excellent question here with all of this data, it's clear that that crash was caused by the same psychological effect that sank the Titanic, that caused the Challenger catastrophe, and caused the Columbia catastrophe. The Titanic wanted to set a speed record, so there was incentive to not slow down. It went sailing into a reported field. Previous liners making the crossing had said there is an ice field with large number of growlers, those are small icebergs, in the area. And Captain Smith on board the Titanic knew that the risk was higher, but he'd made the crossing dozens of times in other vessels and never hit anything. He knew the owner was on board. He knew that this was the maiden voyage of what was supposed to be the fastest ship on the seas at the time. There was tremendous pressure to get there quickly. In aviation we call that get there-itis. And so he ordered Titanic through that ice field at a speed much higher than was prudent, because nothing had ever happened before. And in the back of his mind, he knows he's got a really big ship, but if he hits a tiny little iceberg, probably just brush it aside, okay? So that's what caused the Titanic disaster. Challenger had been delayed a number of times. There had been a number of scrubs. It had famously had the first teacher in space on board, so everybody was interested in seeing this, and NASA was under pressure to get this mission up there. Kids were sitting in their schoolrooms getting ready to watch this. Oh, it's scrubbed again. We had already seen multiple occasions where the O-rings on the solid rocket boosters had burned through. We'd seen that the rubber that's supposed to protect the outside of the solid rocket booster from the hot gases on the inside had burned through a number of times, but it had never caused the SRB to fail. And since it had happened many times without failing, we decided, well, it's probably going to be okay. The day of the Challenger disaster was the coldest that we've ever launched a vehicle, and by far, it was 30 degrees or 33 degrees, which for Florida is unbelievable. 34 degrees, something like that. So it's unbelievably cold for Florida. And once again, we had everybody watching, and the engineers at Morton Thiokol, who were the guys who built the solid rocket boosters, were basically saying you cannot launch in these conditions. It's too cold. When the rubber gets this cold, it loses its flexibility. We've already had burn-throughs on these O-rings. We absolutely do not approve of this launch. In fact, we recommend that we scrub this launch. And higher-ups at NASA basically said, well, we've had O-rings burned through before, and it hasn't cost us the vehicle, and everybody's watching. The president wants to see it, and we've got all these people watching and stuff. Let's go with it. Not only did they launch in the coldest conditions they've ever launched in, they also launched into the largest amount of turbulence that they've ever launched in. You look at the Challenger O-ring smoke trail, and it's just this jagged line. They took off into wind shear, and that wind shear may have had a significant contribution to the actual accident, because it may have shaken up the Challenger might have survived the burn through if she hadn't taken that kind of a beating on the way up. But they just said nothing like that's nothing's happened before. So okay, so that's two now. Then what about Columbia? Well, they switched to a environmentally friendly foam. The external tank has to be covered with foam because it's filled with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. So you got to keep that from boiling off. So you put this insulating foam on the outside of the external tank. And the foam we'd been using had been pretty good foam, but it caused some kind of environmental, CFCs or something were released in the manufacture of it. So they replaced it with more environmentally foam to make it greener. But the problem with the new foam was it didn't stick very well. Now, once they started launching with the new foam, pieces of the foam started coming off on launches and came off on a number of launches where this foam just came off and either slid past the orbiter or maybe struck the orbiter and bounced off. And people thought, okay, well, I guess that's no problem. The foam is, it's lightweight. It's no big deal. So when they launched Columbia, they saw a large piece of foam come off of the external tank, hit the leading edge of the left wing, and just vaporize. And they thought, okay, that's it. No worries. Everything's fine. A number of engineers were concerned about this, and they were so concerned about it that they lobbied the flight director to say, listen, we need to get in touch with the National Security Administration and get some imaging on that orbiter's leading edge wing, because this is the biggest piece of foam we've ever seen, and we don't know if it's damaged that leading edge wing. And the flight director said no. She said, no, I'm not going to bother the NSA to take, because they have the kind of high resolution cameras in orbit that can determine that. In fact, on the very, very first space shuttle flight ever of Columbia, they noticed that they'd lost some tiles on the back of the engines, and they had the NSA image the bottom of the shuttle to see if there were any major tiles missing from the bottom of the shuttle. And the NSA was not happy about that, because that was an indication of the level of resolution that these telescopes have, because these tiles are, this big. So she declined. And essentially she said, the flight director said, would it make any difference? She basically said, well, if it damaged the orbiter, then it damaged the orbiter. Then, we'll probably be fine. Now, could they have saved those astronauts if it had turned out that there'd been a hole, that they'd found the hole? The best answer I've heard is that there was a chance that they could have saved them, that there was another shuttle that had already been stacked, that was in the vehicle assembly building. They probably, if the guys on the shuttle had gone into minimum activity mode, there was at least a chance they could have rescued them, and gotten the astronauts off board, and then just let Columbia deorbit and burn up, but not burn up with the people in it. But they didn't even try, because they had this same kind of thing where it's like, okay, well, we didn't crash yesterday, we didn't crash today, so we probably won't crash tomorrow. Well, it didn't. So to answer your question, could this have been avoided? Yes, but that's not how people work. That's not how human brains work. It's one of the biggest defects in the human psychology, is that if we keep getting away with something, then we're going to assume we get away with it forever. Which is why I've gone to all of this trouble, by the way, on this health issue with this loss of vision in my eye. I've seen more doctors in the last 3 months than I knew existed on the earth. And the reason I've seen these doctors is because I'm aware of how pernicious and persuasive it is to say, look, just don't worry about it. You're fine. Well, no. I got this TCAS warning, and we haven't been able to explain it, and we keep trying to track down the cause. And I'm not one of those people that's going to kick over with either a stroke or a heart attack, and have them say, oh, look, Bill suffered from the exact same thing as Columbia or Challenger or Titanic. He knew there was a problem, didn't do anything about it. So, I can't say anything about the outcome. I may still go down to a heart attack or a stroke. It's possible. But at least I'll be able to say to myself, or say to St. Peter or whatever, I took this seriously. Last update on that, by the way, I went to the cardiologist who put a heart monitor on me for a week. He said there was just one instance where your heart started a little atrial defibrillation, just bing, 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 just four beats. I'm sitting there in this guy's office 2-3 days ago, and he holds up something the size of a large paperclip. It's about this long, and about that wide, and about that deep. It's a tiny little piece of metal like that. And he says, I think we're probably going to want you to wear one of these as a loop recorder, maybe something like that. He says it's brand new. It's about a year old. We've only had him for about a year. I said, what is it? He said, it's a heart monitor. He said, it's made out of titanium, so it doesn't, affect you when you go through airport security and stuff. And basically what we do is we would just make a little nick here, right over here, and we just kind of slide it in, put a couple stitches over it, and it's a subcutaneous heart monitor. And I thought, okay, so how long do I wear that? A month or something? And he said, no, you probably wear it forever. What? He said, no, the batteries will last for about 4 years. And then after 4 years, I can take it out if you want to. Most people just leave it in. I thought, no, I think we'll take it out. This didn't make me happy. But I'm going to do it because the theory is that I might have thrown a clot from. I don't have AVM. I don't. They are looking for the cause. Okay, so he thinks right now the most likely case is that there might have been because it's very intermittent, but if there was a little bit of atrial fibrillation, then it's possible that a small clot formed in the atrium, got pumped through, went through the brain, got through all the big blood vessels, hit that part of the optic nerve, cut off the blood flow to my left eye for about 20 seconds. That's about how long the event took. And then my vision cleared up again. So I got lucky, broke up and just kind of got pushed through there. And we've been looking for the cause of it, and we can't find it. Now, since we can't find the cause, it'd be very easy for me to say then I guess it was just a one-off. Must have been just a one-off. But this guy said, yeah, but what if it's not a one-off? I said, I'm with you, man. He says, I'm real aggressive about stroke prevention. I said, I am too. So the theory would be that wearing this heart monitor would show if these atrial fibrillations are more current or more recurrent than we thought, in which case there's medication for those. But I'm going to get the monitor, and then I'm not going to worry about it. I've said this so many times, and it's time to move on, and we're not going to get through anything like the number of questions we have tonight, and I feel sorry about that. I'm sorry. But I'm going to get the monitor, and like I said, all I care about is I can't do anything about when it's time to come or go. That's not my decision. I don't get to decide that, but I do get to decide essentially one thing. And I've told myself this ever since I started thinking seriously about the idea that, look, you're not going to be here forever. You just like any other human prior to the modern age, you need to be preparing yourself for what happens when it's time for you to check out. And so I decided the one thing that was intolerable to me is that a doctor would say to me, if you had come to me with this when you first had the symptoms, we could have saved you. That to me is more than I can deal with. What is this? Smooch somewhere. Yeah, got it. So yeah, look, and by the way, I'm not a heart patient. I don't have a bad heart. I'm not a stroke victim. I'm none of those things. I'm going to all this trouble to prevent being those things. Me have a stroke? That's impossible, says Dave Big Booty. I couldn't agree more. So this is just an attitude that I have, and I think it's an attitude that would do a lot of people a lot of good. He said it's a crypto something or other, and I said, okay. Let's keep tracking it until we find it. And if it turns out it was a one-off, then terrific. It's a one-off. Let me see. I'm going to be able to do one more question, and I'm just looking down the list. I just want to, since I can only take one more, let me just see what we got here. Yeah, I'm gonna go with this. Um, uh, this will be the last one for the night, and I'm sorry for the people that I missed. Um, Road Rider, hey, Bill. Hi there, Road Rider. Bill, today was the last broadcast of Dan Bongino's podcast. No more. Begins work on Monday as the deputy director of the FBI. Really tearful goodbye for such a tough guy. His goodbye clip was posted to X. I responded early, adding that Bill Whittle had recently commented that Dan Bongino was a paladin and incorruptible knight. I posted a YouTube link of the G-Man hot mic. Then I watched the spot again, hoping some of the 3 million of the Bongino army would click on your video and learn more about Bill Whittle. For those coming in from a Bongino link and they were not aware of the hot mic joke, that particular intro gag was so long and so in the know of a gag, I'm afraid casual Bongino viewers would just drop off. I've heard this before. Scott mentioned this. I think you're right. The question, I know you can, but would you strip the gag out and repost it to YouTube? I'd comment on X again and get the new link up. This is an amazing opportunity for millions of Bongino viewers to see your work who may never have had the pleasure. And a hat tip to Austin Powers. I thank you. Yes, the hot mic joke originally on NRA didn't have a picture, and since it didn't have a picture, I could just make it a one-liner. Hot mic can't be here today. He's having a mud bath. But when I started going with these AI pictures, and I have limited pictures, I had to start thinking of stories that match the pictures, and so the gag became longer and longer, and I'm hurting myself with this. Eric Blake says if there's not hot mic joke, there's no hot mic show. I may go back to going without the pictures and using pictures when I've got it, or as Scott suggested, if I have something that's more serious or more topical or something, then ditch the gag there. I believe I will do that tomorrow because I actually wanted to get some of Dan Bongino's viewers on top of it too. Yes, I need to do a version that cuts the hot mic joke out, especially since that one was as long as it was. As far as ditching the joke, I don't know if I have to ditch it, but I have to keep it to one sentence. Sidewings Raging says the gag is worth the time. And so at the very least, let me just say this. I'll take it kind of one at a time here. At the very least, it's got to be a one-liner joke. Like Marisha Doctor says, Hot Mike can't be here today because he's having to fill out an email on 5 things he did this week. Perfect. Goodbye. I think if I get away from the picture, we still get to keep the joke, and not only keep the joke, but it opens up tons and tons of opportunities. I'm running out of the AI images, so Marisha says I don't think you need to cut them. I just need to tighten them up. Yes, I will definitely do that. I will tighten them up, and I need to recut the Dan Bongino thing and repost it to X because I've only recently started posting to X. I've only done 2 or 3 posts to X so far, and I will repost that, and I'm still so unfamiliar. I can just talk to Grok about this, about how to link it to Bongino. I actually would like to get I'd like to get his email address so that I could send it to him personally. I mean, he knows me well enough to open up the email. But yes, that's definitely it. Or Dave Rennick says you could put that mic joke at the end. Yeah, it's a possibility too. Something to think about. I don't need any help coming up with the lines. I can come up with plenty of lines. Um, I just found that, when you had to describe an image, like I've got one of me hiking, me AI image of it for of it being in the woods. So I had to come up with a got lost hiking joke, and that can get a little, um, you know, uh, just a little bit long-winded. So um, I'm going to host the video on X. We don't have to do a link. In fact, I'll do it right now. Natasha will be coming over directly, and I will do it right now. Um, just one moment, please. I wanted to thank all of you on behalf of both myself and Natasha for going going over and subscribing to her YouTube channel. And I just wanted to post it again for those of you who hadn't. Just one second. Um, I don't want to keep pushing hard because everybody has been. Oh, she just posted one 23 seconds ago. The one we did last night. Lighthouse of Your Dreams. Um, I'm just gonna put it in both comments again. We've had again. You've all been very, very kind. We got to 163 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet and you have a moment just to follow a link and click the subscribe button, and then that's all. Um, it would mean the world to us. Here it comes for YouTube. It's a real simple thing to do, and it's very hard to get started unless you have kind of a critical mass of uh, subscribers. So all of a sudden, we started to see an uptick in the number of views. Here it comes into Twitch. So if you're watching live or if you're watching recorded, I know I've asked a couple times. I'm not going to ask every time, but I really, if you haven't done it yet, it's I know we get 2,000 viewers on the recorded version of this, and there you go. Yeah, I know. I just don't know how to pin it, Marusha. That's probably as easy as pin message. Yeah. Okay, I'll do it next time. Um, I'll go ahead and pin it now. Why don't I? But next time I'll do it at the top of the stream. Um, so, did I pin the right message? No, that's it. Pin the right message. Anyway, thank you. Thank you very much for subscribing, and I appreciate it. And sorry about it being a relatively slow show tonight, or a short show tonight. Oh, Castellan says took a nap to one of Natasha's videos this afternoon. Well, that's very flattering to her, and most people take a nap to my show. So we've got the family business covered. Hey, look at that! Subscribers are going up. Um, yeah, that's fantastic. We gained 10 already, and fantastic. We're very grateful. If I pinned the wrong one, figures. This says replace pinned message. Well, replace pinned message. Yep, I did pin the wrong one. Thank you, Marusha. Thanks for deleting it. I appreciate it. Figures. Yes, I can see now it's pinned. It's all lit in white, and that's why I was wondering if I pinned the wrong one. Got it. So anyway, it's really fun music, and she's been having a blast doing it. She's got 8 up there now, and some of them we got 155 views on the moon and stuff, and those numbers will go up based on the number of subscribers that we have. So we're very, very grateful, and thank you, Marusha, for the suggestion. I'll do it first. I'll do it first thing next time, and then we'll be able to do that. Yeah, got it. Actually, you know what? Let me put a new message up there, and I'll pin that. I'll just fix it a little bit. unpin that one. And this one's just a little bit more descriptive. And I will pin, come on. There we go. Got it. Thanks very much, Marisha. Appreciate it. And thanks everybody for being here. Sorry about the delay from last night. It was a really, really rough day. I was not in a mood. I was mad as a hornet. That's what I was. But anyway, here we are. So thanks very much for all the help and all the things on. I need Dan's. What I really need is Dan's. Yeah, I need his. And I know people have got it. I just don't have it myself. Hey, Chris. So anyway, let's get on out of here, and we're gonna go put another music video up there tonight. And she's just going ahead. She also does sound bowls. If you're not familiar with those, crystal bowls. And the nice thing about those is you get to look at Natasha while she's doing them, and that's always fun. So I get to do that as well. Okay, well, the show's made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com, and we're really grateful for your support, and especially grateful for the family support for going over there and helping her out. She certainly puts a lot of work into those, and I know they're not everybody's cup of tea, but if you do get a chance to just go over and do that, we sure would be grateful. And thanks to the members, as always, for keeping everything rolling here. We're going to be unpacking some new stuff at long last after way too much time and promises and bill time and all the rest of those, ideological and geological factors and all the rest of that stuff. So there. Mouse says, what's up with the bowling shirts? I decided to up my wardrobe for Stratosphere Lounge. So I've got, 15 different bowling shirt patterns that I like for this show because they're nice and casual. And then I've got new polos for hot mic shows, and I've got new long sleeve shirts for the Story Mechanics. Really kind of cool looking, elegant gold. They're just cool. You'll see in a minute. Indeed. Thank you. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. It's been great. We'll say goodbye to our friends on Twitch first. Why don't we? So thanks for joining us. Thanks for being with us on Stratosphere Lounge tonight. And we'll see you Monday night for Stratosphere Studio. And now over to our friends on YouTube. Thanks, YouTube. Thanks for being with us. Great having all of you guys, as always. A pleasure talking about some of these deep things. I don't have the answers to all these things, but fun to talk about and fun to think about. So as long as we're doing that, then I am serving my design purpose to my maximal operating constraints. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys on Monday as well.